Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon from everywhere you are. And we are here with another interesting session with Reem about the Azure Arc and actually security update. I think we are exciting session with the Veeam. And before to switch the Veeam to share the presentation, let me share some slides with you. As you know, we are Microsoft Zero to Hero, and we are here for some session. And every Saturday, we have a session that talk with the expert in Microsoft and Azure. You can join with aka.ms join Zero to Hero and actually follow us in the YouTube channel and LinkedIn and watch our video or session in the YouTube channel. And I think you are familiar with Microsoft Learn community. And just for your information, our learning room is part of the Microsoft Learn community. In Microsoft Learn community is collection of the learning content, text, video, audio, and actually experience or lab. And you can learn more in the Microsoft Learn community and ask your question from other learner or technical expert. You can join from this link, ak.ms Microsoft Learn community. And another topic about AI skill challenge, Microsoft Learn provided. I think it was available in the 19th April, but the learning path is available. You can follow the learning path and content from aka.ms AI skill challenge. And I hope you had a chance to receive exam voucher from AI skill challenge. And the last slide is about code of conduct in the chat or in the question. Be aware of others, be friendly and passionate, be welcoming and respectful, and actually be open to all question and viewpoint, be understanding of difference, and finally be kind and consider to other. Now the time to add the Veeam to a stage. And hello.
Hello, Said.
Hello, Wim. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I think it's the
Yeah,
first time I do a session for a Microsoft Learn community, to be honest. So I'm
yeah.
quite.
Thank you very much your presentation and your talk, actually.
What did you say? Sorry.
And thank you very much for you and your presentation and
You're
your
welcome.
accepted our invitation.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. So I hope I can fill the hour, but that will probably not be a problem, I think. Let's
Yeah,
hope.
a
Yeah.
stage for you.
Yeah. Okay. So let me first share my slides, maybe, to kick it off. So normally my screen is already sharing, or it's not showing anything. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, sure.
Let me bring it to big, and normally now I should have a full screen, I think. Let me
Yeah.
do it over here. So welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us for this Microsoft Zero to Hero community session tonight. At my site, it's already 6 p.m. in the evening, but I know for a lot of other people, it's probably in the morning or in the afternoon, maybe. And if you're watching this afterwards on YouTube, yeah, you can watch it every moment of the day. So I will be talking about Azure Arc and more deeply about unleashing extended security updates. So Azure Arc is quite a lot of people quite familiar probably, but I will deep dive more into the extended security updates and where it can help you with your own environment. Um, so if we look at the agenda, I will start off with a short intro. I will be involving dinosaurs in my story. So we start with when dinosaurs walked the earth. Then I will look into extended security updates, what it is, what they can help you with, what the cost is. It's also quite important because at the end of the month, we all know somebody still needs to pay the Azure bill. Then we look into how ESUs can be combined with Azure Arc, because there are different ways you can use ESUs. And one of those ways is by using Azure Arc, which I will explain. And then I will look into some automation, how you can troubleshoot it. And at the end, I will also talk about cost optimization because, yeah, once again, costs and cloud are quite important together. And I think we will, at the end, completely at the end, we'll probably still have some time for some question and answers. So if you have a question and you're following this through YouTube, put it in the chat. And I think Said will keep it to the end, and then I will try to answer any of your questions you have. Let me also shortly introduce myself for the people who don't know me. I'm living in Belgium, and my name is Matthyssen. I work as an Azure technical advisor and trainer for a telco company in Belgium called Proximus. So in my daily job, I mostly work with customers, every flavors of Azure, but also focusing and helping them with using the hybrid cloud. And that's where Azure Arc most of the time comes into play these days. Next to that, I'm also a board member of a Belgium user group called MC2MC, Microsoft Cloud and Client Management Community, where we try to share our knowledge, and we try to organize an event every 6 weeks in Belgium, live events, where we invite 3 guest speakers related to something in the Microsoft landscape. Next to that, I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer. That's why I probably also love to train people and help them uplifting their skill sets. And I'm also a Microsoft Azure MVP already for 4 years, I think, from 2020. So if you, after this session, have a question and you didn't ask it in the chat, or we didn't have the time to answer it, you can always contact me later on through X. So just go to @Matthyssen or just contact me through LinkedIn. If you want to make it more easier to contact me, just scan the QR code at the right side of the screen in the bottom, and you will be directly linked to my LinkedIn page. I also have a blog where I blog a lot about Azure Arc and other Azure stuff, mostly step-by-step walkthroughs. I work quite a lot with Azure PowerShell. So if you're into those things, you can always look into that one also. But let us now start. Let us start our story when dinosaurs walked the earth. Probably in the movies, when we are in the movies, when this gate pops up, a lot of people think dinosaurs will be coming. Most of the time, they look quite surprised in the beginning, and then the oohs, the ahs, and then the scary running begins. But if you switch that gate to a gate from a server room, and you come into a new customer, and you probably would be expecting, when you open the doors, quite a fancy server room, and probably with, if it's Windows, of course, with all latest version of Windows Server running, 2022 and so on, and the latest Ubuntu versions, and a completely new Azure Stack ACI, the latest SEN, and so on and so on. But also in Belgium, quite a lot, to be honest. When I walk in some server rooms, I still come across these things. Yeah, they're still out there. So quite a lot of companies and even customers of myself are still using Windows Server 2012 or 2. This can be for several reasons. Maybe that specific server is running a legacy application that can only run on that specific OS because the third party who delivered that application doesn't exist anymore, and the latest version only ran on 2012 or 2. Or maybe an in-house developer wrote a piece of code or a specific application. It was running on 2012. He left the company, didn't leave the code behind, so only the application is running, and so on. So several reasons. Even some companies don't have the time or forget some servers to be updated, or that's just doing that sort of stuff. We never touch it. It does its stuff. It works, and so on and so on. So but despite that, Windows Server 2012 R2, for people who shouldn't know it, reached end of life on October 10, 2023. So when that date was reached, you couldn't get any Windows updates anymore. So even the mainstream updates already stopped at 2018. So if you now want to receive updates like this, everybody still Windows, we all know from time to time there needs to be updated, new security features and so on, security updates, maybe a specific bad actor found a new way to get into a Windows server. Microsoft tried to solve those breaches. They bring out new updates to fix it, and so on and so on. We all know the story. So everybody who's still running Windows Server knows that from time to time, and probably if they do it good, every month they need to do or update their servers. Most of the time in different windows and so on and so on, but it needs to be done. So most of the time, first of all, development servers, test servers, and in the next wave, probably a week later or something, when all went well, they can do the updates on their production servers. We all know the story, but sorry if there pops something up. And for those Windows Server 2012, end of life has reached, so no updates were there anymore. But that's where extended security updates come into play. Let me quickly close this for a moment. For some reason, my LinkedIn is just... let me do it on not disturb. Okay. So that should be fine now. Let me go to this. Yeah, okay. So where can extended security updates help? So extended security updates, first of all, they involve or they include all kind of security updates and bulletins rating critical important, also for a maximum period of time. So it's not endless. It will end at some specific point in time. For example, for those extended security updates for 2012 R2 servers and the 2012 servers, it will last 3 years, so you can use them for 3 years. So it will end, if I'm correct, at October 13, 2026. So until then, you still have some time to migrate those servers running those applications you can't fix, or swap it or move them to Azure whatsoever. Move the application away, replace it with a SaaS application, and so on. So until a specific point in time, you have mainstream support. When mainstream support ends, you can get extended support. So it even brings you a little bit further. And when that support also stops, you can most of the time buy extended security updates. Important to know is that they are free of charge for servers hosted in Azure. So maybe your 2012 or 2012 R2 is running on-prem. You use Azure Migrate, for example, to lift and shift it. So now it's running in Azure. If those servers are running in Azure, those extended security updates are for free. Same thing for Azure Stack ACI. So those Windows servers 2012 R2s are running on Hyper-V or VMware Broadcom these days. And you pick them up and you move them to an Azure Stack ACI. When they're running on Azure Stack ACI, even still on-prem, you can also use those extended security updates for free. If you look at the version and timing, I already said it. So if you look a little bit deeper, you can see for Windows Server 2012 or 2012 R2, same thing. If they're running in Azure on Azure Stack ACI, or if they're not running in Azure, so you leave your server where they are and you use those extended security updates, you can use those ESUs for 3 years, and that date will end at October 13, 2026. So, like I already said, it's quite important to know where your server is hosted. So if you already lift and shifted your server and it's running in Azure, like I said, those ESUs are completely for free, and servers are most of the time automatically enabled. So for example, you can use a new Azure Update Manager, onboard them in then, create a maintenance window for that one, and those servers will be updated. Same thing for Azure Stack ACI. Then those servers are still running on-prem, but on Azure Stack ACI. And when they're running there, you can also use those extended security updates completely for free. The only difference is you need, for example, use PowerShell. So that's where PowerShell comes into play for the first time to do the enrollment. So think of that. But there also are two other options. So maybe you want to leave those servers running where they are. Maybe it are physical servers. Maybe it's a VM running on Hyper-V or VMware. Doesn't matter. It's running in your own hosted environment. But then you can still make use of those ESUs. But then, for example, you can use Azure Arc. So the first thing you do is you Azure Arc enable those servers. And when they're Azure Arc enabled, you create a license, but yeah, I will show it later on in this session, and you can start using ESUs. So through Azure Arc, you enable the ESUs, and those servers can also, through the Azure Connected Machine Agent, receive those extended security updates as long as they're allowed. Then the fourth option, I must say I didn't see any customer using it before. But what if, maybe your server is somewhere running and you can't enable it, you don't want to move it, and you also can't Arc enable it, then you can use or buy a specific multiple activation key, or MAC key, like they say. And when you buy that key, you replace the key on that specific server by that key. And when that key is enabled, that server is allowed to receive those updates one way or the other if you get it there. You can access and use those keys via the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. But once again, didn't see any customer using it until maybe next week somebody does it, because they now know about it. But most customers I know will use Azure Arc enabled servers, or move their server to Azure to start using it. So our session is more focused on how you can do it through Azure Arc, like the title is also explaining. Important to know, when you want to use Azure Arc, there are a few requirements you must have. So purchasing requirements. You need to have software assurance via a volume licensing program. This can be through an enterprise agreement subscription, enrollment for education solutions, or server and cloud enrollment. And like you can see at the bottom, there is something start. If your Windows Server 2012 or 2012 R2 machines are licensed through SPLA with a server subscription, software assurance isn't necessary for purchasing ESUs. So first thing you need to know is probably you need to contact your license vendor or somebody in your own company responsible for licenses, and see which specific license you have, and if you are applicable to start using ESUs through one of those specific licenses. If you then look at the pricing, also quite important. When you enable, it depends on the amount of cores and which type of server OS you're using. So we can use data center and standard. Most customers will use the standard and will use the 8 core. So you must rate, it's in euros. You can recalculate it. Just click on the pricing of the Azure Arc page and you can look at the numbers for your specific currency also. Most servers will cost around 35 euros each month. So depending on that, so if you have around 100 servers and you still all need to enable them through ESUs, make the math. So keep in mind, the faster you can migrate of those servers or move that application, the less longer you need to pay for that specific amount of money. What I see at customer sites is that they do quite a lot of mismatching of those licenses. So for example, they mismatch the cores and then they're even overpaying for a specific server because they overpaid, and yeah, it goes faster. If you just do a miscalculation with the course, you're already paying 35 euros more than you need, and so on and so on. Also, sorry, quite important to know, when you enable a specific ESU license, think back of that 10th October 2023. So a one-time bill back charge will be applied for the months elapsed over that end of support date. So if you're starting with creating that ESU license now, you still, first time it goes back until October 10, and you still need to pay for those months at once at the next Azure bill you receive. And from then on, you will receive, for example, a price of 35 euros per license. So really keep in mind, doesn't matter when you enable that ESU license, you still need to pay from the 10th of October. But yeah, it depends on when you enable it. So if you have some of those ESU licenses enabled later on, and maybe you migrated off that specific application from that server, and that server doesn't be mapped anymore to that ESU license, but there are still some other servers, keep that specific ESU license and just map another server to that specific license. Otherwise, when you create a new license, you still need to pay that one-time bill back charge. So keep in mind, don't delete licenses. Only delete them when you're absolutely sure you never will use them anymore for any other server also. With that all being said, let us now look at ESUs enabled by Azure Arc and look a little bit deeper. For people who are not familiar with Azure Arc, most people will be familiar with Azure, I think. At the moment, Azure is based on the R model. And to bring that R model through resources running in other clouds or running on premises or in the edge, you use Azure Arc. So by using Azure Arc, you can start using familiar services like RBAC, logs, policy, update management, and so on through Azure to any of those resources running not in Azure. So in a way, it's bringing Azure to everywhere. Think of it like that. There are all kind of infrastructure services you can onboard through Azure Arc. First of all, and that's where Windows Server always also come into play, is Azure Arc enabled servers. And through Azure Arc enabled servers, you can onboard Windows servers, all type of Ubuntu's, all type of SUSE, so all kind of Linux distros. You can even onboard AWS Linux too. Just look at the supported OSs, and probably most of them will be able to onboard via Azure Arc enabled servers. Next to that, if, for example, on your Windows server, there's also SQL Server running, you can even take it a step higher, and you can Azure Arc enable your SQL Server. You're not only doing stuff on your OS then anymore, you can also do best practice assessments, for example, on those SQL Server. You can even use extended security updates for your SQL Server. So if you're still running SQL Server 2012 or the other version, you can also use the ESUs through Azure Arc enabled SQL Server. So two flavors at the moment. Third option, Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes. So we have Kubernetes running on-prem or somewhere else, doesn't matter, at the edge. You can also onboard Azure your Kubernetes into Arc, and then do AKS, even do AKS on Azure Stack ACI, for example. So already three kind of infrastructure services you can start using. But next to those three, you can also do Azure Stack ACI. In Belgium, Azure Stack ACI is coming up, so quite a lot of companies are looking into Azure Stack ACI or are already using it. Next to that, people familiar with Hyper-V and System Center in the earlier days will probably know System Center Virtual Machine Manager. When you are still running System Center Virtual Machine Manager, you can also Azure Arc enable your SCVMM, And by doing that, you can start doing the same things like you normally log on to your SCVMM and do your VM management from there. You pull it up to Azure, and you can even start doing it from Azure. So you don't need to log on anymore into your SCVMM management sorry, server, but you can do it through Azure Arc. Let me pull some water, sorry. And the last option we have is Azure Arc enabled VMware vSphere. So if you're still running in ASX and you have a vSphere on top of it, you can even enable that one as Azure Arc. So with that being said, when you then enable something through Azure Arc, what you can start using is all kind of Azure services. So you can start using additional management services, like think of Azure Policy, think of Microsoft Sentinel, think of Azure Monitor, Azure Automation, Microsoft Defender for Cloud, the new Update Management Center, Azure Auto Manage, and if you're a bigger company, for example, and doing the Azure stuff for your customers, you can even integrate Azure Lighthouse. So, like I already said, ASUs enabled by Azure Arc. You can not only use them for Windows Server 2012 R2 or Windows Server 2012, but you can also use them for SQL Server 2012. Also quite important, because I still know a customer running Windows Server 2012 with on top of it SQL Server 2012, and he's even combining ESUs. So he's using an ESU to keep his Windows Server updated with the latest security updates, and he's using ESUs to keep his SQL Server 2012 updated with the latest security updates through ESU. So for Azure Arc, how does it mostly work? There are some prerequisites. I call it best practices. I always try to create a separated subscription for any type of Arc resource. So I can have an Arc subscription landing zone dedicated to infrastructure-related Arc resources. I can have one dedicated to data resources, so Arc Data 01, for example, and so on and so on. Or I can even have one at some customers for Arc Kubernetes stuff, for example. So if they're running Kubernetes, we even pull that one to a separated subscription, and we put it underneath landing zones. So you can see my my management group structure. People knowing Cloud Adoption Framework and the well-architected framework will look at it, and probably it will be quite familiar. I have a shortened abbreviation for management group, the company name, for example, and then when I lower down, I just abbreviate the company to just a 3-letter abbreviation. Most of the time, the first 3 letters of the company name. And then I mostly use all those familiar management group names like you can find in the Cloud Adoption Framework. So I have decommissioned landing zones, I have a platform, I have a sandbox, and so on and so on. And my Arc infra, I create an Arc infra related. You can also see the Arc Data one management group underneath it. And for example, the one hosting my Windows Server 2012 or any other Windows server I onboard into Azure Arc will be running on my Arc Infra subscription. That's the first thing. When you use a new subscription, most of the time for some services you will need to install some resource providers. Also, this is the same case for Azure Arc. For being able to onboard your Windows Server 2012, you at least need hybrid compute, hybrid connectivity, but there are also some other resource providers you require. If you use any of those more not node enablements, like the one for SCVMM and the one for vSphere, you also need some other resource providers. If you go to my GitHub page, for example, I have a complete Azure Arc onboarding script, onboarding PowerShell script, and it will install all resource providers required for example, if you run it, it will install all resource providers required for any of the Arc enablements. So look at that one. You probably can already go on. So keep in mind, use a dedicated subscription is my advice. Try to install those resource providers in front. Then also, by the way, for the people, this is the old way. This screen was still there last week, but in the meantime, Microsoft did Azure Portal update, and the navigation blade will look quite differently now. So if you pop over to my live demo a little bit later, you will see there are some differences, but the naming is the same. Only thing is some places will be under other sections and so on and so on, but I will show it a little bit later. So the thing is, I also create a subscription, install the resource provider, create a service principal, and that service principal will be purely used to onboard any new servers to the Azure to the Arc onboarding script, which I will explain a little bit later. So that user, so I don't need to pop in a password anymore. I can just run the script. I can put it on a shared resource somewhere on a file server, and then use the script from over there, or I can use a GPO and put the script in there, whatsoever way you want to do it. But that service principal will help you, and I always advise people to create the necessary service principals in front before they start onboarding anything into Azure Arc. So for Windows Server, you need the Azure Connected Machine Onboarding Service Agent. You can simply create it through the portal. Just go to the Azure Arc page, go to Service Principal and click on Add, and just fill in all the things you need to fill in. Or you can also automate it through PowerShell, Azure PowerShell, Azure CLI, and even through Biceps if you want. Then the thing I mostly also do, I have a dedicated resource group where those onboarded servers will be stored in. I follow a quite same naming convention following my overall naming convention. I'm quite into naming conventions, that's why. So this one is called Resource Group Production. You can see the short letter abbreviation of my company name, Arc Service 01. And next to that one, I also create one purely to store any created ESU license in. So that those licenses I create are in a separated resource group, so I can also do other management tasks. I can delete ones without interfering with other resources. Or when those ESUs are completely not needed anymore, I can simply delete that specific resource group, and all ESUs will be gone. That's how most people need to work and should work. Then to onboard your server, then you need to create the onboarding script. You can do it through the portal. Let me quickly jump to my portal and show you. So you will see now my Azure portal probably. Just go to the global search bar and type in Arc. Then underneath services, go to Azure Arc, just click on it. And like you see, this is the new portal view. You can see the navigation is completely different. A little tricky. If you want to open everything at once, just click at this and it will be shown. So I always work with a specific background. I also always have the black borders and the white background. I almost never use dark mode. I love to work in this one, but everybody has his own favorite way of doing it. So if you want to create that onboarding script, just click on Overview. You will see Get Started. Simply click on Add Resources. Go to Machines. Server is to Machines. If you want to create an onboarding script for any of the other ones I showed you before, just click on one of those. Just click on Add Create. Click on Add a Machine. I mostly never do it for a single server. I mostly create a script for multiple servers. So simply click on Generate Script, and then just fill in everything. Connectivity method, that's also quite an important thing. The standard version is public endpoint, but if you, for example, in your company are using a proxy server and everything needs to pass a proxy service like that one, or if you want to use your ExpressRoute and put all Arc traffic through ExpressRoute, try to use a private endpoint. Then you need to create a private endpoint link in front of it, but it's self-explanatory. But it all depends on how your networking and your hybrid networking is set up. So if you just go through all the scripts over here, for example, you can select that earlier created service principal. So if you follow all those steps, at the end, you can download the onboarding script. It's a PS1. For the service principal, keep in mind, when you create a service principal in front, it has a secret. That secret is only shown at the moment you create that service principal. So try to store it in a key vault so you can use it afterwards. Otherwise, it's gone and you probably can't fill it in. And when you create the onboarding script, when you downloaded it, you need to fill it in over here. So get it from your key vault, paste it in here and adjust it. And then you just copy that onboarding script in PS1 to a shared location on a file server whatsoever. Put it in a GPO to be pushed out to specific servers, or you can simply do it through PowerShell and put to remote PowerShell. There are different ways to push it out to your servers. And then let me go back to my slide and make it bigger again. And let me switch. Yeah. So you downloaded the script. I already showed you. Like you can see over here, that's how it's shown when you download for the first time. Enter secret here. Like I show it in my Visual Studio Code, I already filled in the secret. Then an important thing to also think of, you can use tags you use for any of your other resources, but next to those, you can also use specific Arc related tags, specifically for Arc resources. One of them is, for example, you can specify the data center, you can specify the city and so on. The only thing is, I had a lot of customers using data center 1, data center 2, with a space in between. What the script does, it will put those single marks next to it. And if you leave it like that, the tag will also be named like that. So those quotes will be next to it. So adjust them, clean them up if you use a space in any of the naming of those specific tags. It's just a little tip. And then you can simply run the script on your server and those servers will be onboarded. It takes 2-3 minutes max, and then you're good to go. And what does it does? It will install the Azure Connected Machine Agent on the server, and that Azure Connected Machine Agent will allow you to use Azure Arc in a way. To be able to use ASUs, quite important, the Azure Arc Connected Machine Agent versions need to be 1.34 or higher. Like you can see, for example, the ones I use, that's my 2012 is the 1.40. So also keep that one in mind, because if you have a lower version, you can't use ESUs. Then you first need to update the Azure Connected Machine Agent. Quite important. You can simply check it. If you don't know how to do it, just open Windows PowerShell. But let me show you quickly. So I have a Windows server over here. You can see it. It's a Windows server. Just open PowerShell. And type in AZ same agent and then version, and then you can see this one is running version 1.40, for example. That's how easy it is to validate it on the server itself. Also something important, to be able to receive ESUs, your Windows Server 2012 also needs to be updated to the latest normal versions or updates. And if your ESUs aren't coming in, it can be because those specific KBUs, depending on which OS you're running, if you're running Windows Server 2012 KB 5029369 and the other one, or a later SSU needs to be installed. And for Windows Server 2012 R2, those two or a later SSU needs to be installed. It's quite important to remember because I had some customers, I enabled everything, my ASU license is there, but still don't receive any of those extended security updates, and that because they had to install those. Can be helpful. Hopefully you never need to install them separately, but if you have the problem, also think of this. And then your server is into the portal. Let me show you. Let me quickly close off this. So if you go to your machines, for example, underneath Azure Arc resources section, open it up, you will see all your Azure Arc enabled servers. You can simply filter on them. So select the filter, let us say the operating system, and it needs to be equal to Windows Server 2012. If you apply that one, you can see I have 3 of those onboarded. They're all 2012 R2s running the standard version. So you can see at the moment, when the script has run, everything went well, your servers will be onboarded, and you can do all those other stuff you want to do. But for us, it's looking into the extended security updates. So server onboarded, and then the next step is, if you go back to the slide, let me switch again. The next thing is, creating an ESU. Quite important over here is there can be a physical core or a virtual core, and the Windows Server version, when you went at 2012 or 2, can be data center or standard. Most customer, I must say, if you're running your VM whatsoever with 2012 or 2012 or 2, a Windows Server version always be the standard edition. You never need to select the data center edition. Then you also never need to use physical cores. Then you also end up with virtual cores. Keep in mind, for every server, even if it has lower than 8 cores, the minimum needs to be 8. So you create an ESU license, a standard edition virtual core, the cores need to be 8. Even if the server has just 2 cores, it needs to be 8. It is what it is. For the data center, it's a little bit different. Data center, you will only use it if, for example, you're running Hyper-V 2012 R2, so the Hyper-V, and you want to license that Hyper-V 2012 R2 and all 2012 VMs underneath it or whatsoever. That's the only time you need to use that data center edition license. And then really keep in mind, if your server is still running on a physical server, that's the only time you need physical cores. But I must say, most customers I had virtual cores with the standard edition. Never had to use any of those other ones. If you go to the portal, for example, it's quite easy to create such an ESU. Once again, go back to the Azure Arc page. Let me close off everything. And then scroll down underneath operations, and then you find extended security updates. Just click on that one. You can see I already have quite some licenses. You can also see in my naming I use for my ESU licenses what they stand for. So for example, physical core, data center, virtual core, standard. So you can see the data center SKU, the standard SKU. Because I'm using the standard, the minimum is 8, 8, 8. Data center, because it's physical, the minimum is 16, for example. When you create them, they can be in a deactivated state. From the moment you set them active, you start paying for them. As long as they're in a deactivated state when you create them, you're not yet paying for them. And then you can afterwards link a specific license to it. So you can simply click, if you want to create a new one, through the Azure portal on the Create button. Specify a specific subscription. Let me take my Arc Infra. Specify that specific resource group. give it a name, ASU demo Azure 0 to Hero 01. Let me see. Activate later. Just click on that one. Specify a region, also quite important. Mine is West Europe, so all correct. And then, depending the SKU, data center, you can select everything. If you switch it to standard, virtual course, give the amount of course. So you can already see that it's also already advising that the minimum is 8. Just type in 8. And then you need to say that you have that software assurance. Keep it the requirement you need to have. Microsoft is really asking it again before you can enable that specific ASU. Just select it, click on create, and after a few moments, that specific ASU license is created. Then the next thing you need to do is select that specific license, for example, and map an eligible resource. If you click on the eligible resources, automatically all Arc-enabled Windows Servers 2012 or 2012 R2 VMs will pop up, and you can simply select one, click on Enable ASUs, and then just specify virtual course, and then you can simply specify one of those ESU licenses you created in front. What I mostly do is map a single ASU license to a single server. I never combine more servers in one license, with the only exception for the cost optimization at the end, but I will talk a little bit later, but I never do it for any normal other servers. So with that being said, let me jump back to my slide. Let me see if I missed something. Yeah, okay, let me swap this again. I showed you all the ESU license. You can see at the moment I have 2 activated. You could also see it when I had my Azure portal window open. So for those 2, I'm not paying at the moment, and also not for this one. I'm only paying for these at the moment. I also showed you how you can link a license, go to the eligible resources, and map a specific Windows Server, Arc-enabled server, to a specific license you created. And then, when all those things are done, and everything is okay on your on-prem servers or Windows Server running somewhere else, you will be able to receive extended security updates. And on one of my devices, for example, one of those updates is the one on, came out on April 9, with KB 5036960, as you can see. That's how you can follow up. Like I said before, how can you obtain and deploy these ESU updates? It all depends on the mechanism you're already using in your company. Some companies are using Config Manager to do it. Other companies are still using WSUS. Even smaller companies with just 10, 12 servers that just click it. They just go to the server manager and do it manually. All good for me. It's everybody's own choice how to do it. How I mostly advise it these days, especially if you're doing Azure and you already have quite some Azure EAS VMs, and you want to use the same mechanism for your on-premise servers. So I don't know, probably some people will know it. You first of all at Azure Automation, the Update Manager. So you could set up an Azure Automation account and configure Azure Automation updates from over there. These days you can skip that one because some time ago Microsoft came up with the Azure Update Manager. The first thing with difference between Azure Update Manager, it doesn't need to have the log analytics agent anymore, which was still the case when you used the Azure Automation Update Manager. It's completely agentless. So from the moment you onboard a server through Azure Arc, for example, it will already pop up over there, and then you can do a check for updates for that specific server. You can do a one-time update, and you can even make scheduled updates. So that server, for example, through Azure Update Manager is updated every month in a specific window that's required. So doesn't matter which thing you're using, just configure it that those ESUs flow through there, and that those Windows servers receive them. Last thing I want to mention, automation, troubleshooting, and cost optimization. As I already said in the beginning, I do quite a lot of stuff through Azure PowerShell, which can be quite handy when you're doing stuff with Azure Arc. So I already created 2 scripts, for example, one to provision an ESU license and another one to remove an ESU license. In the beginning, when ESU licenses for Azure Arc enabled servers 2012 and 2012 R2 came available, you even didn't have a delete button in the portal. These days you already have, but when I need to delete and create ones, I mostly use those scripts. So let me, for example, show you to create one, how easy it is. It's called a provision one. You just you do is connect AZ account, of course. You connect it. Then you can start running the script. You specify your subscription and then a specific ESU license name, and then processor course you want to use. So I have a specific name. In the script, it even validates if the name is following your naming convention. So if you ever download the script, also adjust that part so it follows your naming convention. And if I simply click it, it will take less than a minute to create a new ESU license. So it will create the 05, which wasn't there before. So if you go back to the portal, close off this screen. Yeah, okay, now I closed a little bit too far. Let me go back to extended security updates. You can see it's not still there. Sometimes you still need to refresh a few times before it's there. So let me try it, and there it is. Without doing anything through the portal, just through a simple Azure PowerShell script, that specific ESU is created. Even to clean up, I also, like you could see on the screen, I also created a specific script. Same thing, it will remove the ESU license. You specify the subscription name, and then you just specify the ESU license itself. Just type in the name, just hit upon enter, and with less than a minute, that specific ESU license will be deleted again. Probably if I refresh, it will not be that fast, I think. Let me see if this works. Let me go out of it. Let me go to somewhere else, and I'm back, and hopefully now it's gone. And now it's gone. So like you said, sometimes you need to refresh or move out from the Azure Arc page to another one, and the license is gone. So that's how easy it is. Through automation, I even created now an Excel file, and it picked up the naming for all the licenses I need to create for a customer from in that CSV, and then creates through Azure PowerShell all those ESUs, and we can even map the servers from a specific list to the correct ESU. So whenever you do it for quite a lot of servers, try to automate it, and never do ClickUps like some people like to call it. Try to avoid the Azure portal. When you're doing stuff with Azure Arc, the Azure portal can be useful. Just to look at things and see if everything is configured correctly. But if you need to do quite a lot of things or onboard quite a lot of servers, make them eligible for the ESUs and so on and so on, try to automate it, I would say, in whatever language you want to use. I mostly do this kind of stuff, especially Arc stuff, through Azure PowerShell. I think with that being said, I went through this. If you want to validate the Azure enrollment, you onboard, you make them eligible. There's also a way to look at it if that specific ESUs are enabled. So if you go back to the server, type in AZCM agent once again, type in show. you will see, you will get all useful information that the Arc agent is running. The Azure is not using the Arc proxy, the extension server is running, but at the bottom, you can even see extended security updates, the status, it's active. And every month after you pay, the status will be active and it will jump for a month. So that's one way to do it. Another way to check it is to regedit. So through the registry editor, you can do it from a management server and through remote connecting to a registry editor, but I'm doing it right now. Then go to a computer, high-key local machine, software, Microsoft, Azure Connected Machine Agent, Azure Arc ASU. Click on that one. And if this one is on data, the value is on 1, Azure Arc enabled ASUs are enabled. So that's another way to check it if you want to do it on the server itself. Still need to play registry. If you have a problem with it, so you looked at everything, but there's still a problem and you don't receive the ASUs, I would say I will share the slides afterwards if you want. There is a Microsoft Learn page explaining how to troubleshoot it if all those steps didn't went well and everything was showing like it would. Just go through the steps, and if going through the steps still doesn't fix the problem, I think you need to open an Azure support ticket for it. But most of the time, I must say, I never had really problems with enabling ASUs. It was also something, most of the time, something the customer configured wrongly. He didn't put it correctly in his WSUS or whatsoever, and so on. Just go step by step through it. See if Arc, the connected machine agent, is working. See if those ASUs are configured correctly in the Azure portal. Just go and figure it out step by step. And in the end, look at this page if you even can't figure it out, and otherwise open a support ticket. Last thing, there is also an additional scenario at no additional cost. So a lot of customers do have dev test servers, and they have the same production server running. Even if you have software assurance, you need to create a billable ASU license, map that specific production server, the same way as the dev server, to that specific ASU license, and then afterwards map that dev server to the same license. So at that moment, you have 2 servers connected to 1 license. The next thing you need to do is use a specific tag on that ASU license itself. You can see an example over here. Oh, sorry. And now I clicked. With 2012 Visual Studio Dev Test, or if you're doing disaster recovery, that's another option you can do, the VS 2012 Disaster Recovery. Put that exactly like it is on the screen right now, because if you even do it in lowercase, it will not work. So see that the name of that tag is called ESU usage, and the value is exactly like this. And if I show it in my Azure portal, for example, I have a license 03 over here. You can see it has that specific tag added to it. And if I then look at my linked resources, you can see I have a production server, Web04. You pay 35 euros for that one. And I have a development server using Visual Studio Enterprise code in the back. Doing the same thing as a production server. The only thing is I can receive ESU updates, but I don't need to pay for that server. So instead of paying 70 euros at the end of the month, I only pay 35 euros. What I also need to do on that specific server, you can see that specific server also needs to have that specific tag. And that's the only way. But see, you're really eligible for it. See, you have the right license for it. And then you will be able to combine. But only if those servers are doing the same thing. And the one is purely for development purposes and the other is production. And now you only need to pay once. And I think with that being said, I think, Said, we can do Q&A if you want. If there are any questions or whatsoever.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Wim, for great session. It's very useful for me actually, and I think it's for
Yeah,
other
you're already using
guys.
quite a lot, I think. Yes, so
Yeah, and actually, there are some comments. Maybe the guys can ask a question in the comment, and there are some comments I will show you, and maybe you can add more comments for this one.
yeah, Active Directory, yeah, domain controller. Most of the time, it still be running on-prem because it needs to do. I think he's meaning that. I think. If you do it in Azure, if you do IaaS, you probably will also have some domain controllers running in the cloud. So if those domain controllers running on-prem are still using Windows Server 2012, this is a way how you can update it. But I hope nobody is still using domain controllers running on 2012 because they're quite important in your environment. And my advice would be to upgrade them as soon as possible.
Yeah. And the last one, what was writing the comment?
Azure Cloud Server used when you're using multiple cloud servers. What did she mean by that? If I may, Azure Cloud Server used when you're using multiple. Azure Arc. Yeah, you can combine it if your servers are running in AWS and they're running 2012 R2. You can even Arc enable them. And you can then do those ASUs through those Arc-enabled AWS machines. That's probably how they do it. But there are different ways, and every customer and every organization has its own way. Some want to leave them on-prem. I even have customers, we still need them, but we're phasing them out. We still need them for 6 months. We know it's not supported anymore. We want to use those ESUs. Can we simply lift and shift them into Azure so we don't need to pay for those ESUs? And when the server is not needed anymore, we can just drop it. Then the only thing you should keep in mind, of course, is instead of paying nothing anymore when that VM was running on-prem, if you move it to Azure, you will pay the IaaS cost, of course.
Yeah.
But then you need to figure out and calculate if the IaaS cost is cheaper than the price of the ESU and so on and so on. It all depends. It's whenever you make a design or a choice, think of all steps and never forget to make the right calculations, I must say, because we're moving to the cloud because we think it's cheaper. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Why do we think it's cheaper? Why do we think it's cheaper? Because we're running it in Azure. We don't need to do the calculation with electricity and so on and so on. But it depends. You need to do the complete calculation. And a lot of customers, to be honest, miss some parts of it. Or they use ESUs, for example, if they don't have the software assurance. Yeah, okay, you can set it up, but you're not allowed to use it because you don't have a software assurance.
Exactly. I agree with you. I think there isn't any question in chat, and we can.
If anybody has a question afterwards, just contact me on Twitter. I think my Twitter, X, sorry, these days. My X has there. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Just connect and ask a question. I'm happy to help. And I know for ESUs, quite a lot of questions will arise, I think. Quite something specific. It's a specific use case when you're using Azure Arc. So it's definitely not for everybody, but there are still, I see them quite a lot. A lot of companies still using those Windows Server 2012, and it's a way you can extend the uses of it, and in the same way stay a little bit more secure. But the advice is, still, and it's also Microsoft advice, try to move really away from them in that 3-year time period. Otherwise, you're ending up with the same problem in 2026.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Thank you, Wim. Thank you, guys, for joining to another session, and I hope to see you again to another session. Wim also with testing.
I hope to see you also, and
Yeah,
hopefully
yeah,
face to face now, and not always through.
exactly. Thank you again. Bye, guys.
Bye bye.